I don't need motivation to keep me doing what I do,
Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
but I'd rather be rich than poor.
Oh God, so you just triggered the crap out of someone. It's easy for you to say that money doesn't buy happiness.
Every single thought you have dictates the actions that you commit in life. Change your thoughts and you change your world.
Welcome back on the pod, mate.
Thanks,
I
man.
think you are the first guest doing a round two with, I believe. The first podcast, if you guys haven't watched it, we talked about raving, we talked about psychedelics, we talked about mindset, women, a little bit of business in there as well. It's one of the best performing podcasts that we've ever had on the channel. So I'm going to link that in the description. Go check it out after. But if you're new, welcome back to Conscious Entrepreneur. And this is Jordan Platten. I'll let you do a quick intro for yourself and then we'll dive in.
Quick intro. An elevator pitch intro.
Yeah.
Let's do one of them in a long
Why
time.
should the people listen? Why should they buy your product?
I'm Jordan Platten. I've been an entrepreneur for the past 8 years. I've worked with over 5,000 people in various high-ticket programs, but scaled an agency of my own first and foremost, and still own that agency to this day. We work with various online businesses all over the world, and hopefully I can spit some fire for you guys today. Let's see.
So I think what would be cool is because you've been in this space for a good amount of time, and I want to keep it above the surface level of just the beginner stuff. So I think even if you are a beginner watching this is going to be the stuff that's actually going to really help you going into like the real mindset, the behind the scenes stuff, not just the surface level tactic stuff. You can go and get that anywhere on YouTube. We're going to go much deeper into this. It's going to be a bit more conversational. This is just going to be the kind of thing where you're just going to get a lot of little nuggets. As if, imagine you paid to have a mentor who's made 8 figures in the online space. This is the kind of wisdom you're going to get that's going to be more timeless. So sit back, grab a coffee for this one. You're going to enjoy it. To start off, Jordan, if we rewind back to when you started, right? When you were starting out in the space, compared to now, I want to know, what was your initial motivation for wanting to start in the very beginning days? And how does that compare to now?
I had a catalyst. I had like a single moment that triggered me to start a business. So I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was the kid at 16 years old at the end of the night at a house party that was still sitting outside with everyone that was smoking, because that's where the only place you could hear yourself to speak. And I'd be ranting about how I was going to be a millionaire one day, and people would look at me like I was an idiot. And that happened for 16 all the way through to 21 years old. And I was the guy that spoke about success and didn't do anything with it. And it's because I thought that you had to invent the next Uber or the next Airbnb, some big idea. I never was exposed by business, and so I didn't have the right people around me to tell me, actually, honestly, man, what you can do is just do something that people will have already done 1,000 times over and add your little spin to it. And so before I realized that, I started working through jobs. I wanted to make money. I went to university, got kicked out of university because I started a nightclub event business on the side, doing PR on the streets, and then ended up running the events. And eventually I got into this position. I was in a sales job, probably my third sales job, and I was sitting in the office, and I'd just come back from holiday, and I said to everyone in the office around me, back to reality now. And I said it, and as I said it, and I looked around at everyone that was like 2-3 times my age, I was like, if my reality that I live in right now is something that I fear going back to, then I need to change the reality that I have. And if I don't, I'm going to be like everyone else in this room who's 2, 3, 4 times older than me, that is still in the same position they were, when they were my age. And so my motive initially was, I need to make my reality something that I look forward to going back to when I come away from a holiday. And I'm grateful to say that is my instance now. Like, what used to be a 2-week holiday now is like 4 days, and I'm itching to get back to work on the businesses that I have. And I'm very, very grateful to be in that position. I mean, we're sat here in Cape Town and just in nature. I'm a nature nut. I love it. And I spent a lot of my time in nature growing up as a kid. And I always say I had to have everything to truly appreciate nothing. And now I get to sit, look outside, go do some fishing on my lunch break, and I just crack on with work, and I'm so fulfilled and grateful to be in the position I'm in. And so I suppose I've come full circle from that initial desire of making reality something to look forward to.
Reminds me of that meme where you see the beginner starting out and you've got some like crappy computer and maybe a phone, and then you make some money and now you've got the whole like Herman Miller chair, the super fancy setup, 3 monitors, and then you get the master who's just back to the laptop again, keeping it simple. It's like that whole arc you always have to go through. Okay, there's a lot of different threads there that I want to go down. The first one, you mentioned you were that kid talking about success, right? In the work I do, as mindset, using hypnosis, a big part of it is self-hypnosis. It's speaking your reality into existence. Now, of course, action has to come with that as well. However, most people don't do that. Most people, everybody else at that party, for example, probably weren't doing what you were doing. You were that one kid. So if you look back now, we can go into why you think it was that way, but do you see in retrospect how that helped you to get to where you are? And I'm just curious to unpack that whole concept of manifesting your reality through what you actually put out there.
It undoubtedly helped because if nothing else, it created a ton of internal pressure that I had to fill the boots. And what it did over the years is create a lot of people that doubted that I was able to fulfill the words that I was expressing. And that created a aggression within me to stick a middle finger up at those people and prove them wrong. So call it manifestation. And first of all, I'm a huge believer in manifestation. I believe that I've attracted everything that's happened in life, and I believe that we have the power to quite literally mold the universe around us to my core. But even just from a logical sense, I think it created people that doubted me, and that doubt was something that fueled me to be who I am today. But my favorite quote in the world from a guy called Norman Vincent Peale, and I think this was in How to Win Friends and Influence People, I'm not sure which book, was change your thoughts and you change your world. And that, just as a baseline, is something that I live by every single day. And on that basis, being the kid that spoke about it and then becoming the man that achieved it, that's not a coincidence. Yeah.
So it's interesting that initial motivation was the aggression. It was proving people wrong. A lot of the clients I now work with had a similar thing. Maybe some of them are not as far as you. Maybe they've just had their first couple 100K months or 100K month and now they're stagnating. Or even if they're below that for the average person. But that fuel that was initially driving them, the wanting to prove people wrong, isn't working anymore. And I think a lot of people can relate to that because it's that driver changes. It's a very common problem that I see with guys I work with. And so for you, how did you overcome that? Because now knowing you and me and Eros, who's helping film this, we were on the way here and we was talking about, he was just observing how you're very much more grounded, much more relaxed. There's at that mastermind we were at there's a big difference, but there's a very notable difference. Maybe part of it's just age and wisdom as well, but I believe that there's some certain lessons you would have taken or things you would have done to switch that motivation into something a little bit more, maybe bigger, maybe a pull, maybe something wider. But I'm curious how that journey was for you in terms of finding that new motivation once you essentially had proved everyone wrong, right? Because you did prove everyone wrong a long time ago. So what's the driver now?
I think that I have an unwavering trust that what will be, and the universe what the universe has in store for me is what is meant to happen in that very moment. And so I flow through life. And I know that even after I'd made more money than I've ever had, I've had some of my lowest moments. I've had difficulty in business. I've had issues with team. I've had issues with income. I've had issues with products that we've created. There's always hurdles and there's always new challenges, which is the love of it. But I trust in the process, and no matter what can happen, I don't perceive it to be positive or negative. It's just what it is, and I accept it freely and willingly and openly, and trust in the process that I eventually will get to a place where, where ultimately, like, I want to be. And well, I say that, but in saying that, I didn't trust those words because I don't want for anything else. I strive to, achieve more in a material sense, make loads more money, So I truly don't know the meaning of money anymore. That's something that's always quite interested me. Like, there's one thing having lots of money, but it's another thing like having so much money you don't even know what money is anymore. That's a place that I would like to explore. But equally, I could die tomorrow an incredibly happy man and be so proud of everything that I've achieved. And so, in living with that mindset, it allows me to not put pressure or need motivation. I don't need motivation to keep me doing what I do, because I keep doing what I do because I love it and I enjoy it and I like challenge and I like the game, and I trust in the process that things will just happen, good or bad, through anyone's perception. And I think that actually comes from a place of deep, deep, deep understanding of myself and the ability to be on my own, in my own brain, which I have conditioned myself to be over years and years and years. Many people are motivated by the external because they cannot face their own internal. And for me, I've always been an introvert, but growing up, I realized that extroverts get all the fruits, or at least from my perception of it. And so I created an extroverted character. I created this extroverted. My mum used to say to me, Jordan, you just can't be by yourself, can you? You always want to be around people, So I created this extrovert, but I wasn't comfortable within myself. And so over time, I had to force myself to spend a lot of time on my own, in my own company, in my own thoughts. And I think that's one of the best things that you could do in business as an early stage entrepreneur who is going to be lonely, who is going to be isolated. And I think in doing that, I've just found so much peace in my own company that I really don't want for much. And therefore, I don't need to dig deep to work hard, because I do it because I love it.
You were at that place when you were trying to prove people wrong. You did prove people wrong. And then at some point, through spending that time with yourself, going on this personal development journey, this self-inquiry journey, spiritual journey, whatever you want to call it, you were able to reconcile those thoughts and basically become more content with who you are. Maybe that's my perception of it. There's a study done on men, and they basically asked the man, would you rather be in a room by yourself for 10 minutes in silence, or would you rather be electrocuted? Most men said they'd rather be electrocuted. So why do you think people struggle with that? Because the state you're in, to me, that is the state I strive to help get people to. It's where you've got the things you want, the success, all of that's there, but then internally you're also free. I believe there's external freedom, time, location, financial, which everybody online is selling, but this is internal freedom, what we're talking about, which I believe is much more valuable. Ideally, you have both. You seem to be really focused on gaining both. So why do you think it is that almost nobody has that, at least if we talk about the internal side first?
I mean, I think business for many people is a crux. I think business is something that keeps people entertained. Like many things in life, like going out drinking, like speaking to girls, like business is one of those things that lots of people do, like lots of, especially men, default to, because it's what everyone else does. And I think truly, I mean, I can't judge everyone on a grand scheme, but at least from my perception of the people that I've met throughout my life, very few people are truly comfortable in their own skin. And it's because when you doing the work on yourself, just like doing work on the business, it's difficult because it forces you to face inner demons. It forces you to face, things that you may have gone through in the past. I've been very fortunate that I've had, I've been very blessed in life. In the sense that I was never, silver spoon. I'd never been born into money at all, but I've never been through real trauma. I haven't experienced that, and so that certainly helps. But everyone's got their own inner demons, regardless of their own subjective experience, and what might be, catastrophic to one person might be minute to another person, but it's all just about our own perception of that, right? And so, whilst my life hasn't been, like, by other people's definition, traumatic, there have been things that have, created insecurity or created self-doubt. And so, spending time alone, you have to face those things, and you have to come out the other side of that and be truly comfortable in it to even get close to want to find inner peace. I made a video, I think it was up to probably 4, maybe even 5 years ago now, and it was the first time I went to an external mastermind. It was Sam Ovens mastermind in LA. I booked 2 days after that mastermind to spend time on my own, and the video was titled How to Find Inner Peace in a Chaotic Digital World, because this is something I've always really truly been passionate about. I see so many people living externally, materialism, watches, cars, all of these things that I also love, but for completely different reasons. That's a shame, you know? And that's why I'm such an advocate for what you do and massively support your mission now, because that's what people, I think most people at least, are actually seeking in business. But they find money, and then they find money and realize they're still miserable, and then have to do all the hard work. But I'd rather be rich and have to work on myself than poor.
Agree.
Yeah.
I'll second that. Oh, God. So you just triggered the crap out of someone who was listening to this.
Good. Well, hopefully it's the catalyst for thought.
Exactly. So it's really easy for someone who's not there yet to hear that and go, oh, it's easy for you to say, right? It's easy for you to say that money doesn't buy happiness, no matter how many times they hear that. But then I think they'll also, particularly in my audience, like anybody who listens to me knows that that's the case, because it's all I essentially talk about, and it's the thread of everything, right? So then here comes the next thing. One of the biggest fears for a lot of people is, okay, I hear you, Jordan, maybe you're right, but what if I then become content and then I lose my drive? What if I then don't want to make money? Is that fulfillment that you're talking about, does that come at a cost of business, of success? What's your
Well, people are far more motivated by a fear of losing something than they are from the gain of something, right?
Yeah.
And so you're never going to lose it all, because you'll be so terrified to go back to that previous life that you had. So to be a successful person and then to actually lose your motivation enough for you to lose everything, I mean, you're just a fool. Like, and most people, I don't believe, would find themselves in that position, because you're so terrified and petrified to go back to not only the previous life from a materialistic sense, but just from that previous mental space that you used to be in. You know, so I don't believe, at least, that you would lose the motivation to take you to a place where you completely lack and you go back. Could you lose the motivation to stop growing financially? Absolutely. Is that a bad thing for some people? Not if it's not what they want. If there's something else that fulfills them better, if they're more, driven by a relationship and not just a partner, but relationships in general, and they're motivated by a specific cause or something greater than money. Which ultimately I think is what money unlocks for people. You earn money, and then you earn the privilege to sit back and think about what you actually want. It's like the first stage business is always the gateway. You get into it like the agency model. The agency model is a perfect gateway model. It's a gateway business. It gets you in business, and then you end up, either selling it or using it as a vehicle and going into something else. The second or third business is when you're truly feeding into your passion. So is it a bad thing that someone loses their motivation to make more money? Not if that's not what they want.
I'm smiling because I had a session with a new client today, and I won't say his name, millions of subscribers, very successful young guy. He's made a shit ton of money in the space, and now he wants to become a rock star.
Awesome.
Like legit. Like Panic at the Disco, 30 Seconds to Mars, he's got like that, but with a pop twist on it. And he's like deadly serious. Nice. I think he'll do it. And it's just like, all right, you've got too much money, mate. Because you've got to lose a lot of money to go out and do that.
What a beautiful place to be in.
Exactly.
What an awesome place to be in.
I'm like, cool, yeah, we can, let's do it, man. This is awesome to work with you on that. But okay, cool. All right, so we've talked about, I think, a lot of the deeper topics to start with. I think these are the things that a certain percentage of people are going to hear, and it's going to touch them, and it's actually going to genuinely impact their life from hearing that. I'm really glad we got to start with that. I want to go now into where your head's at business-wise, the online space. I think one of the valuable things that the audience can gain from you is your perspective on business, particularly online business, because you've been in the space more or less since the early days, right? Mm-hmm. Since the Tai Lopez beginning days, that's when I also started. It's crazy now. Some of the guys I work with don't even know who he was. I haven't even heard of him, which still blows my absolute mind. But now looking at the state of the space, where it's going, what are your thoughts from a macro trend? If somebody's looking to just gain some insights, gain some unique perspectives from you, maybe some insights from your coaching calls where you have your 500K a month agency owners on there. What's the source that you guys are talking about that no one knows?
The source that no one knows, that would be hard to come by. I'm not even sure I have that source. I'd have to dig pretty deep for that. One of the things that what's the main thing we're looking at? I mean, I don't want to be cliche right now, but I have to, call out to AI, especially within agencies. It was only yesterday on Friday, actually, I was having a conversation. We brought all of our senior leadership coaching team out to Cape Town, and we were having a mastermind, and we were talking about how crazy it is going to be to see this new evolution of young agency owners starting off with AI in their core to start off with, because we have to unravel 8 years of shit to figure out how to invest in AI and how to, adopt it and so on. We've already got processes that have been built over years and years across tens of team members that we're now rebuilding, which is, a fun process in itself. But the guys that are just starting out are building from scratch, integrated. And so it's probably the bigger of conversations that comes up, and one of the topics that's always about. Probably one of the most useful, tangible things that's coming out of that is the whole AI appointment setting side of things, which is something that all online businesses can apply. Using AI to respond to people via SMS and email and so on, which is massive. It was only yesterday I was talking about the whole email side of things. The solution doesn't yet exist. I know a couple of companies that are building it, but the solution still doesn't exist to be able to plug your email inbox into an AI that's going to automatically respond to it, which is crazy. Like you think about the amount of email flow that's coming in on so many companies. We have, a point wise with SMS and Instagram DMs and anything like that, but we skip the email part. It doesn't yet exist. And so those technologies are always coming up a lot. I'm yet to meet an agency owner that uses something like that hasn't dramatically increased their conversion rate. And also, I suppose the latest advancement is I now believe we're in a place, and we're currently testing out a completely automated cold outreach system. So plugging in, your ICP, so your ideal customer, we know who they are, automatically generate the leads, automatically personalize the outreach, automatically send the outreach. And so in theory, once it's set up and it's built, an agency could literally just turn up to sales calls every day. And for anyone that's been in the space for a long time like I have, that's a great thing, because the pain of cold outreach, especially manual outreach and the lead gen and all of that stuff, it's an exciting time to be alive in this space.
How far do you think we're off that being a reality, where you can just come in and basically just automate all of that?
I mean, for it to be like a consumer-led SaaS-based solution, like probably, 6 months, it's going to happen really, really quickly. What's going to be even more interesting to consider is how quickly it's going to take for the entire industry to be automated. Because if we keep innovating at the rate we're innovating, within the next 10 years, we might all start rolling up into conglomerates, because eventually it's just going to be like 1 to 5 companies that control the entire market. And I suppose it's going to be the platforms that dictate whether or not they allow that to happen. But ultimately, when we're automating our outreach, when we're automating our service delivery, when we're automating our internal processes, and we have AI agents doing, what do we actually have? We have a software business. And then when everyone's got a software business, they just get rolled up through some kind of merger and acquisition, and they end up being one entity. And at the rate we're moving, I mean, we're going to continue moving at that rate, and things are going to get really crazy really quick, and we're all going to make a load of money in the short term, but eventually we're going to end up being farmers again, or having we will also have construction businesses,
Make money offline. Yeah. I told you, that's the secret.
It's going to be make money offline. That's happening. That will happen. That's happening, right? But it's whether or not that happens in 10 years. Or what we're seeing now is this overinflated bubble, and then we're going to find like a new normal, which is probably more likely. Like everyone's going hysterical about it, which is why AI is getting like 15 times multiple on revenue on exits. And then I think like we'll settle, and then we'll just have like a kind of a gradual growth. But it's anyone's guess.
Yeah, we actually don't know.
No,
it's kind of like it's such a unique time in history to be alive, because no one really has a clue. Even the smartest people don't know what's happening with it. That's really cool. One of the things Serge said he's spending a lot of time thinking about is, and got researchers on and stuff, is he sees his business turning into, they have these, basically provide these AI agents, and then you basically sign up, and then one builds the funnel, one builds the outreach, one builds the setter, and it just basically just builds your business for you. And that's essentially what you're buying. But then also they have all of the data through all the clients that gets merged into know what are the best things to do. They'll even pick your niche based on AI, based on what's the best opportunity, based on all of the inputs and knowledge that they have, and that's kind of his vision for how he sees things going, which is kind of a crazy thing to even
It's
think
very
about.
interesting. I'd like to see that from him and see what he does with that. It's what is interesting about that though in itself is like, as incredible as that is, you're making cash for 6 to 12 months until the technology advances even further, and then that's the given thing, and that's the thing with AI right now is the opportunities that we find ourselves with are short-term opportunities. It's not, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't get in the game, because you get in the game and you're exposed to it, and then you're going to evolve with the technology. So you're going to move on to something else. But 8 years ago, I started an agency. I still run that agency, and it has evolved, but it's not the progression that we've had in our agency from 8 years ago to now, as far as like tech advancement is concerned, or even like 2 years beforehand. Like, in the last 2 years, we've grown at the same rate as we grew in the previous 6. I think is a better way to put it. Right. Last 2 years since AI. In those 2 years, we've advanced so much from a technological standpoint. And that can be compared to the previous 6. And so if that's anything to go by, like, we are no longer going to be in opportunities that we stay in for a long period of time. We're going to get in stuff, make some money, and then innovate really quickly, which is going to force us to move extremely quick. Which ultimately won't be us. It'll be AI that's innovating on our behalf, which then raises the question of, does independent thought completely diminish? And then, are we really entrepreneurs because we're just clicking buttons and AI is doing it for us?
I think Eros asked me a question today. I was having the developer come around for my AI app, and then he was like, well, when's AI going to be able to do what you do better than you?
Yeah.
And my immediate answer was, no, it won't be able to. But then I thought about it logically, and I was like, probably won't be that far, to be honest. When I think about it, at least from big elements of it, in terms of it being able to do it, probably not that far. Is that what people would want? That's another question.
Well, but then I suppose the question is then for you is, do you believe that what you do is not just about the words and the delivery of the tonality? Is there something like an energy that has to be transferred, and therefore, out of interest, do you believe that?
I do believe that.
Yeah, I think I do as well.
I do, but I still think, if I'm being fully honest, that there will be a big market of people, as when we get so used to AI that we know it's AI. It's like people who watch pornography, right? Like, they know it's not real, but they live in that fantasy that it is. Or the AI girlfriends is a huge thing right now. Someone was telling me about it yesterday, like multi-billion-dollar industry immediately out of nowhere.
Crazy.
And, I need to test drive one to see what they're like. But I imagine it's like a video on a screen and you're talking to the girl, and she's talking, and it's just like you're talking.
Yeah, I think it's like a visual GPT.
Yeah, or maybe there's even real robot ones. Like, I don't even know. I know Elon's building the robots, so I don't know if they've got physical AI girlfriends yet. But it's like, it's not real, but then it's giving you connection. It's giving you all these emotions that you feel. And then will there be a certain point in time where, what's the difference? It's a bit dystopian.
It's kind of like what's happening with AI voice right now. AI chatbots are working really well because they mimic human. And so we can be fooled that we're speaking to a human if it's an SMS or an email because it's text. The AI voice thing, no matter what anyone says, just isn't converting at the same rate as a human is. But that's only until psychology changes and it just becomes socially acceptable, because through repetition we've spoken to enough, and then we realize actually we prefer it because they don't lag and they get us the right information really quickly, and blah, blah, blah. So it's society's going to have to change, and the question is, can society change at the rate that AI is innovating?
My immediate answer is probably not, because of how fast it's going. It's just mental right now, isn't it? Okay, interesting. So AI is the big thing. So for somebody watching, how can they be looking at AI? Obviously, you mentioned appointment setting. That's a really big one. How else are you using AI to you said, the change in the last 2 years has been bigger than the previous 6. So what have been some of those changes that have helped you?
I think there are 2 things that everybody should be doing right now when it comes to making sure that they are ahead when the time comes that things get crazy. Number one, it's what a gent called Ryan Dice, who again is an OG of the industry that many people won't have heard of, but he built and sold traffic and conversion funnels, which was the biggest marketing conference in the US. He's now owned a portfolio of about $200 million, and incredibly successful business owner in the info space as well over time. He teaches a concept called value engines. Value engines is just simply process mapping. And so it's outlining, let's say, on Miro, or he initially will do it on like a, Post-its. This is something we've done a lot over time, but we really just honed in on this process recently, and I'll tell you why it's important in a moment. But let's say you've got your client acquisition strategy. Let's say you've got your fulfillment strategy. We call them a client acquisition engine or a fulfillment engine, and we outline the entire map of what happens. So if someone watches a YouTube video, then they go on this funnel, and then they opt in, and what happens if they do but then purchase, or they don't, and then they go to this email flow. And so it's a sort of visual representation of everything that's actually happening. Now, most people know that stuff, but they don't have it mapped out, and it's certainly not organized. And so we have that for every single area of the business. And my mindset is that is what we need to set the foundation for when we then use AI agents in the future. Because if every single process in the business is outlined, kind of like how when you get a McDonald's franchise, there's an SOP for everything. Anyone can start a McDonald's franchise if they've got the right amount of money, and they can learn how to do things like McDonald's do them. So we have SOPs. So standard operating procedures, documents that outline step-by-step different processes, whether that's onboarding, whether that's, training a new team member, whatever that looks like, alongside these value engines. And so the business, as far as a computer is concerned, could be completely analyzed and understood, without someone needing 8 years of experience to know it. And AI is going to be far more intelligent than most of the people that would pick up the company. And so if we have that, and everyone can do that at all stages of business, then that will serve as the foundation for AI to understand the ins and outs of how we work. And then the theory is we can plug in an agent that will create automations on our behalf, that will find inefficiencies, that will even run those departments because it understands the process already. But having the process mapped is the baseline to that. The second part is custom GPTs. So we'll use ChatGPT, but using the custom GPT feature, we now create one for every single content pillar in the company. So internally, be that writing value posts, be that creating YouTube video frameworks, we always come up with the idea, but we'll use AI to put that in a nice framework to suggest a bunch of hooks, to maybe write the initial first draft of a value post. And we have one of those for each. And we don't just build that initially, but we're throwing that back with all of the best performing things that it's outputted over time. So over the course of 6-12 months, that's getting a brain of its own. And we also have a custom GPT for every single client that we have in the agency as well. So we're feeding that with a knowledge base. We're feeding that with the best performing creative. So again, it's just like this. The way I'm seeing it is like it's the microchip to the big AI machine that is, going to soon be upon us. That's the microchip, that's the engine, that's the brain, that's the knowledge, and it's just going to enable us to be able to be much quicker to the mark when new cool shit happens, because we've got, just from a baseline perspective, everything documented. Yeah.
So you're prepared, basically.
We're prepared.
You're ready to
You have to be.
Yeah.
Well, and it's very easy to do that.
And that's what gets you ready to be able to take action first. Because I feel like with AI, a big part of it is speed. It's being in early, being able to move fast, and then being able to, like you said, reap the rewards of it. And if it's a 6 to 12 months period, but you can do very well in that 6 to 12 month period.
Yeah, 100%. It is preparation, because it's all well and good. ChatGPT came out, but the people that understood how to get the most out of it were the people that had all the experience in knowing what good output is in the first place.
Yep.
It's all well and good using ChatGPT to write your copy, but if you don't know what good copywriting is, it's going to be shit. And so we're just laying the foundations in the rest of the business just to make sure that that computers can understand what's going on, outside of our brains. Because most people will have a good measure of everything that's going on in the business, or at least they should, but they haven't documented it. And even just away from AI, if you just take that out of the equation, it's just a foundational business practice that just makes life so much easier, because it allows you to look at everything that you're actually doing and take a step back and reassess whether or not everything you're doing is worthwhile, reassess if everything feeds in properly, reassess what you can get rid of, what you can automate, what you can delegate. It's just good practice.
Outside of agency, in business, what else is interesting you? What else is something that you're focused on right now?
My main focus in business right now is just focusing on what we have. Last year was a really interesting lesson for us. So we dipped a little bit in revenue last year, not considerably, but enough for me to notice. And it was because we spent the entire year, we decided at the start of last year, we had an exceptional 2023. And we decided at the start of last year, we're gonna scale really aggressively. But what we did is instead of scaling vertically, where we just focused on what we had and we increased spend and we increased output, we scaled horizontally. So we thought, let's build new products, let's build new offerings, let's test loads of new offers, let's hire loads of new team members. And what ended up happening is got really bloated with team. We had too many products, we're testing too many things, and we started neglecting the things that were already working inside the company. And I think it's Hormozi actually has a quote, and most people, I think it's just oversimplifying this, like most people in business, you spend 80% of your time most people spend 80% of their time on new things, on testing new shit, and 20% of their time on the stuff that's already working, when it should be flipped. We should spend 80% of the time on the stuff that's already working inside of the business and 20% on the stuff that is new, right? Which seemingly is obvious, but if you analyze yourself over the course of a day as an entrepreneur, like we always seek other distractions other than the thing we know we should be doing, because it's more exciting to work on new cool shit than it is to focus on the thing that we've been doing for the past 5 years, even if it is the thing that makes us all the money. Because as entrepreneurs, at least most of us, we're creators. We like building things, and we like seeing and proving to ourselves that we can do new shit that actually works. And so it's kind of counterintuitive to focus on the same thing through repetition again and again, but that's the thing that gets us a result. Anyway, as obvious as that may seem, we learned that lesson the hard way last year. Now, it enabled us to create some really cool products, enabled us to refine. In entrepreneurship now, this year, our mission, just this whole year, we're not building anything new. We're going to focus on what we've got. We're going to do it incredibly well. We might refine it, but we're just going to scale up spend. We're going to scale up the team that matters to maximize on this thing. And it has just been bliss. It has just been incredible. Like the energy shift from last year to this year in actually just focusing on the stuff that I know to work. It's a very stress-free existence right now, and long may it last. It won't, but I hope it does for a few more months. And actually, I'm kind of getting itchy feet for when shit hits the fan a little bit. Yeah.
Your spidey senses tingle, you can feel it. Yeah, it's such a big one though, isn't it? I think even if you're at an early stage, I don't think it matters where you are in the business. I think that desire to want to do new shit is just within us all of the time. So it's interesting how you say that that's what you're focusing on. It's almost like the more boring thing from some ways, but actually it's the thing that not only gets you more money, but it sounds like increases your life quality significantly as well.
Life quality is increased, significantly. Yeah, because you don't have anxiety around something working or not. Because when you're building new things all the time, you're like, I hope this works. Like, this is going to be this thing that does this. And you create these visions. Like, it stops becoming about money. I mean, sometimes it's money. Other times it's just like a big impact. And other times it's just proving to yourself that this project you've invested 6 months into, that you kind of know in your heart, probably, like, you get like, I think everyone's been in a project where you're like 3 months, 4 months deep into it. And then you kind of like, at some point realize that it's probably not the best move, but you keep committing, you keep doing it. And then eventually you prove to yourself that it was a waste of time anyway. And you take the lesson and move on. But it's not having that. It's now at the moment just having the ability just to eliminate all anxiety as to whether or what is or isn't going to work. It's playing life on easy mode in many cases, which ultimately I think is what the lessons from many successful people, or the lessons that you get from many successful people. It's like you grind and you work so hard to find something that works and to make money. And then once you've made money, it's about preserving the money you've got. And so we adopt that mindset if we've got 10 million in the bank, and then we start investing it really conservatively. But we don't always necessarily adopt that same mindset with a business that's making 10 million. It's like, okay, now we need to conserve it. We still, in very many cases, keep ourselves in this startup mindset, which is, has its pros and cons, but it's, you're not maximizing on life experience if that is the case, because you're keeping yourself,
What's your goal with business?
It's a good question. I love building amazing things with amazing people. I'm looking forward to my first exit. That's a short term. So there's a book called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, and I recommend everyone reading that book or just watching some keynotes. And it was a really interesting book for me to read because I realised that I was playing what he calls finite games. And so I don't have an end goal in business, and you actually end up losing if you have an end goal, because you get to that end goal and you're like, okay, what next? And so I'm playing an infinite game in business, and the current business I have is a vehicle at this moment in time. Is it going to be the business I'll run forever? Of course it won't be. I'm 30 years old. There's going to be all sorts of different businesses I run over time. But I'm playing an infinite game, and on that game I have different, things, like little check boxes that I'm looking forward to. At the moment, the check box is an exit. So I've been investing over the past 5 years in various different softwares. I invested in School, I invested in Triple Whale, I invested in Clay.com, and a bunch of others. And so I'm really enjoying investing in great companies at the moment. I'm looking forward to riding one of their exits, and for the first time getting a big influx of capital and seeing how that feels. I think that'll be an interesting experience. And then at some point, I'm looking forward to, almost getting out of the industry I'm in entirely. Maybe in 10 years' time from now, we'll see what happens. See when the AI bloodbath happens, I'm like, okay, that's me gone. I did warn you. It's happened. And I'll start selling bonsai trees or something like that. Who knows? But I think at some point, through the exits that'll happen over the next 5-10 years, and maybe sooner, who knows, we flow. I think at some point I'll be in business, not for the money, because I'll have already made it. It'll be doing I joke about the bonsai tree thing, but I could see myself doing that. I could see myself buying and selling rare trees for a couple of years, or just getting into a craft. And then you're in business, not for the money, but for the love of it and for legacy. And that's another checklist on that infinite game, I suppose. But I haven't thought too much further outside of that.
It's funny how I was speaking to one of my friends, Nick. He was also at the mastermind for a short period of time, young guy in info, makes very, very good money for a 21-year-old. And he said, sometimes I just feel like I want to give all this up and just go and craft things out of wood. And he's like deadly serious.
Awesome.
He's a Dutch guy. And I think there is that innate desire in all of us to just want to do physical things with our hands. And I think that's, whether that's as a business in the future, but or something we can just incorporate now, I think it's actually such an amazing thing that we're missing. I used to fight sticks with friends when I was a kid growing up, and I think we don't really have that anymore. It's a shame.
It's why I spend so much time in nature. Like, I spend a lot of time in nature. Like, once a week I'll go for a really long hike, and I mean like 6 hours, and that's just been my routine here. And I think I get that from that. But I think ultimately, like, that point of wanting to go and do something physical, it comes back to what I said earlier of, like, you have to have everything to appreciate nothing. So would he feel like that, or did he feel like that before he started his agency? Maybe not. No. It's probably now he's working his ass off and he's made some money that he's like, that sounds pretty amazing. And it's funny, I'd forgotten, I think it was maybe only yesterday evening or very recently, I was having this conversation with someone. And it's like we were talking about someone that's been doing that their whole life. Let's say they've been woodcrafting, they've been making wonderful furniture, and they've been doing that their whole life. That person will get to old age, or they'll die, and I don't deny that they'll die incredibly happy in their subjective experience, but they will always wonder what if. But we will never wonder what if, because we will have earned that, and we will have done the thing that most people will never get to experience, which is having, whether that's having an unbelievable amount of money, or that's building legacy, or that's having loads of customers, it's earning power, it's earning status, whatever that is that business gives us, 0.01% of people, will achieve that in life. And I at least believe from my own life that I will be very grateful that I went and did that, to then go and do nothing, because I will never wonder what if. So I might do something that I was always able to do before I had business. And that's a win, because it then allows me to do that thing completely freely without having to concern myself over, wondering whether or not I fell short. Which is a very interesting concept in itself.
It's super interesting. One of the things I do with everyone I work with on the first session in a group, I'll take them through hypnosis, and there's these 2 pathways that I'll take them down. One of the pathways is everything going exactly as you could have ever imagined and getting them into that reality so they experience it. But the other pathway is taking them all the way into the end of their life when they only have 60 seconds left and the seconds are counting down, and they think back and they can't help but feel regret for the things that they didn't do and the opportunities they didn't take and the potential that was unfulfilled. It's really interesting. It's particularly for people in our space, men, high performers, go-getters, whatever you want to call them, that wakes them the F up. They get so motivated by that. Not, and it's not even out of fear. It's a healthy relationship with our morality. And I think that we do live in the illusion that we'll live forever. We know consciously and logically that we won't, but we do live in that illusion because we become so complacent with things. But if we actually constantly remembered that the only thing, it used to be death and taxes that was inevitable. Now it's not even taxes because no one even pays tax anymore. So it's just death, right? And even with AI and all those things, it's still, even life expanded, it's still going to be death. And when you actually think about that, I think it's just fascinating how much can change when you have that perspective.
I agree. I agree. And it was a gent, I won't name him, but someone who was at this event last week came to Cape Town for this event, and he said to me, the first thing he said to me was, the last 4 days, I didn't leave my hotel room. I was like, so you just flew to Cape Town 14 hours, and the last 4 days, he didn't leave his hotel room. And he's like, I'm in grind season, bro, I'm in grind season. And I'm like, what is that for? Because if you can fly across the world to another country and not leave your hotel room because you're grinding for something that's coming in the future, then you're never living in now. And all we have is now. It doesn't get any better than now. If you're not satisfied with now, okay, you can be unsatisfied with now, but you have to be content with now. You have to be content with now because it's the only thing you've got. You don't have the future. It's like Fugazi, it doesn't exist. And so if you sacrifice now for the future, I hear this whole concept of like, you either have an overworked 20s and live in your 30s, or you live in your 20s and then you have to work in your 30s. That's not my experience. I have lived my entire life throughout this whole stage, and I work my arse off. I go through stages of working 16-hour days. I go through stages of consistently doing that for a couple of months' time. But I will always get a couple of hours in to go for a walk. I will always eat well. I will always look after my health. I will always work out. I will always make the effort to go do things on the weekend. I don't work weekends. I don't sacrifice that time. And I am, at least from my perception of things, successful. I have everything I want. I don't want for anything. I never have to look at the price tag of anything. And sure, I haven't got a GT3 RS yet. I'll get one soon, hopefully. Maybe, we'll see. If I can get the allocation. If anyone's from Porsche's watching this. But what I'm getting at is, if we cannot be completely satisfied with where we are now, if we cannot live in the present and we're always living in the future, then we won't live a fulfilled life. And I was having this conversation with him, and it clicked with him because, and I think I got through to him. But I think many people find themselves in that position because they're always living for the future. And I don't resonate with that. We have to sacrifice everything now and we have to grind, because that hasn't been my experience. And I know many people that have been able to build a very, very successful business whilst also having an incredible time during that process. I would much rather grow 25% less time, but have that 25% of my time to be able to spend in nature or with friends or doing whatever I want to do. Or if someone else is watching this, whatever you want to do, you don't have to want to do what I want. But dedicating that time, I would much rather sacrifice that growth period to be able to enjoy the whole process. Only to be hit by a bus and be like, fuck, I just locked myself in my bedroom for the past 2 years. For what?
Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
It is. To sacrifice now for the future is a failure. You don't have to sacrifice anything. You do. You have to sacrifice things that don't enable you to. You can work at a 9 till 5, but if you drink all of the time and you're always in a hungover headspace, or if you're always in a come down, then you're gonna be prohibited. You can still drink, but if you're doing it all the time, it's too much of that is gonna make the business fail. In the same sense, if you're just seeing girls all the time, you're distracted. There's many things that you have to sacrifice in order to be successful, but you don't have to sacrifice living.
I want to ask one final question to wrap up, and I asked this to you last time, and you probably don't remember, and you probably don't remember what you said. So this is going to be great to have a comparison. We're going to fast forward to the very last day of your life. You have everything you ever wanted. You have, at this point, amazing family, children, whatever it is you want, very successful businesses, exits, more money than you could have ever imagined, where it doesn't mean anything to you. And as you have these last few minutes left with the people that you care most about, you cannot leave any of that material success behind to them. You can't give it to them. But you can give them one piece of wisdom that you have learned from your life that you want to pass on to them. What would you tell them?
I've already said it. Change your fortune, you change your world. You don't need anything else other than that. I truly believe that. Like everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of some kind of thought. If it's positive or if it's negative, both are the same depending on how you tell yourself, what you tell yourself. If you can or you can't, both are the same. Every single thought you have dictates the actions that you have, that you commit in life. And so if you don't have what you want right now, change the way you feel about it. If you feel you can't do something, change the way you think about it. And I know that's oversimplified because it's easier said than done to change the way you think about something. But there's a lot of comfort in knowing that someone else feels the opposite to the thing that you feel right now about a certain situation. And there's a lot of comfort in knowing that whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And if you just get in your own head and spend the time by yourself to really allow yourself to understand what you need to do to change the way you think about certain things, or at least perceive them, then everything you want is possible. And I think that's an awesome thought. So I wish everyone around me could think like that, or at least more people.
Well said. That's literally my life mission. So I'm very much in alignment and agreement with that. Also, what I have tattooed on my arm, this is short for internal state equals external reality, which is what I always say, which is very much in that. Jordan, it's been an absolute pleasure for this second time. Thank you for agreeing to do this again. We'll link everything below, your YouTube, Instagram, website. Is there anything you want to tell people before we wrap up?
No, just find me on YouTube, watch some shit, do some shit, and have fun. Cheers, man.
Peace.